Thank you all for inviting me here. Delighted to be here. H2O, water is supposed to be an inorganic compound of that is largely or almost tasteless, odorless, almost colorless, right? Actually, water has many colors, and I'm going to speak to you about a few of them today. Hydrologists, of course, divide it into green water, blue water, gray water. Green water, that is, stored in the soil and nourishes the plants that grow there. It is released back into the atmosphere through evapotranspiration. Blue water, of course, is from your rivers, lakes, reservoirs, and aquifers. It's clean enough to drink, and also you use it for cooking and other domestic uses. Gray water is water that's already been used, water in which you wash the dishes or your hands or whatever. That's the hydrologist, but I'll leave that to the hydrologists. They love categorizing things. Like they have 4 to 6 categorizations of drought that hydrologists have. But journalists, to my eternal mortification, only look at meteorological drought. There is hydrological drought, there is agricultural drought, there is socio-economic drought, but we only bloody bother about meteorological drought. If it doesn't rain, there's drought. So there are other colors to water. And those colors are the political economy of it, the political, social, caste, class, and other economic contours of water. That's something that I'm going to look at. Please remember that you're living in a country where every major, the biggest interstate disputes are over water. What is the biggest political dispute in the south of the country? Kaveri, between between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. What is the biggest irritant and dispute between Tamil Nadu and Kerala? Mullaperiyar. Okay? Between Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh, Almaty. So, you can find on every state border, you can find these disputes. It's not just that, as we know, people have killed each other in the riots over the river sharing of the waters. People have died in those riots. It's funny that, if you look at the Telangana side and Karim, you'll find fathers-in-law fighting their sons across that border for the water flow over there in parts of Telangana, Karnataka borders. In Kurnool, many years ago, we came across a case where a brother killed his eldest brother over what? Not land sharing. The father dies, he leaves about 20 acres to 5 sons. The division is more or less equal. Everyone gets 4 acres. But who gets the acres with the borewells on it? Because borewells tend to be concentrated in one side of the land. You can have 20 acres and 18 acres your borewells don't work, but 2 acres they work. So the dispute over who gets that 4 acres with the borewells on it led to the eldest brother being killed by one of his younger siblings. That's how explosive, down to the lowest unit, water can be. You have chosen a good state to come and look at this issue. Maharashtra, I'm going to talk about water in terms of 6 transfers, all of which are various creative, and within which we find many creative ways, and all of which are ways that are essentially privatizing a natural resource. That's what it's about. Okay? Remember that water is the last great frontier for privatization of natural resources until we get started on oxygen, though I think we made a good start there with the Kyoto protocols, right? Yeah, pay and pollute. So, but only about 14% of the world's water, is actually privately owned, and 4 companies control that. But it means that the drive towards privatization of water, because all the other major resources are privatized, including common lands. So water is that last resource, that last bonanza, El Dorado of corporate profit. You're meeting in Maharashtra, which has seen, by the way, since 2000, 102 drought events, and 79 of them in the last decade alone. Extreme flood events, it has seen 19 between 2000 and 2019. What is a drought event? It's a prolonged period of time where there is a lack of precipitation leading to water scarcity. State averages actually mean nothing, even national averages mean nothing, because within the state there are many places that will have acute water scarcity. Yeah? And there are some which, anyway, we'll get to the transfers. So the Maharashtra has had 79 drought events in the last decade alone, 102 since 2000. Flood events also it has had, it's had 19. And the transfers I'm going to talk about, they have huge overlaps. And all of them are now feeding into climate change. All of them are feeding into that one way or the other. Now, though these are overlaps, I'm not going to go into details to tell you what are the unique features that mean that a poor to rich transfer is not exactly the same thing as livelihood to lifestyle transfers. There are some specific differences and issues here. The first of the, I'm not again reading these, giving you the transfers in any order of priority. I'm not giving them to you in any, I'm not saying number 1 is most important. They are dynamically interacting and engaging with each other all the time. The 6 transfers I'm talking about, there may be others, but I think these are pretty key. 1 is of water from poor to rich. 2, rural to urban. 3, agriculture to industry. Within agriculture, food crop to cash crop, transfer of water, especially since 1991. The incredible emphasis and growth of food crop and actually decline in many states of area under food crop and increase in cash crop. Maharashtra is the finest example of all the rotten stuff that you can think of. Livelihoods to lifestyle, and number 6, I'm sure most of you are familiar with it, but it bears a couple of paragraphs of explanation at the end. The 6th transfer is local markets to national markets to international markets through the trade which has been recognized as virtual water exports. Okay, you're all familiar with that? It means, for instance, immediately there are signs of alarm that here is this guy against exports. I'm not. It's that you need to know what you're doing with your water. You need a picture of what uses you are putting your water to. And you need to, for instance, in the virtual water exports, India exports millions of tons of food grain, millions. In fact, our export of food grain, particularly wheat, shot up from 22 because of the Ukraine war. So our exports have really massively grown since 2022 and the start of that war. Now, virtual water export is the water that goes into that food crop you cultivated. A ton of paddy requires in its production from low to high, the lowest minimum amount of water that a ton of paddy requires is 1,500 liters. Okay? But India, Thailand are on the higher side. We take between 4,000 to 5,000 liters per ton of paddy. It's also to do in the forms of cultivation we employ. Okay. So, poor to rich, rural to urban, agriculture to industry, food crop to cash crop, livelihood to lifestyle, virtual water exports. And another thing, all the numbers, some of the numbers I'll show you, and most of the numbers that anyone discusses in this country on water, they're pretty limited in one sense, apart from the fact that they're often plain wrong. They're pretty limited in this sense that we only talk about the needs of human beings. Our numbers of per capita are about human beings, whereas water is essential to the survival of all living beings. Yeah. So when we say our per capita water availability, that's only of one species on an earth that has millions of others. So in the course of this, I'll be looking at something in which I call the thirst economy. By the way, the two greatest crops in the world, I've always maintained, they are not rice and wheat. The two greatest crops in the world are hunger and thirst. And you'd be surprised how few are the corporations and super rich who harvest those two crops every year. You can look at it in terms of the monopoly of agricultural commodities trade. You can look at it, you want to look at it crop wise, you want to look at it product wise, you can look at it in coffee, in tea, in whatever you want. It's a surprisingly, more than 100 years ago, I think about 120 years ago, Rabindranath Tagore put it so beautifully. He said, food is the source of great wealth. Food production is the source of great misery. Who produces? What are their needs? What is their water need? Right? So this is, so I'm going to be looking at the thirst economy, where they lead. Let's look at Maharashtra. I'm going, as I said, not in any particular order, but also let's look at the national picture. Here, water per capita availability in India. In 1951, that was 5,177 cubic meters per Indian. Yeah, human beings. Second, by 2001, it's down to 1,816. By 2011, it's 1,545, 1,545 cubic meters. And that is a fall of about 70%. It's a fall of about 70%. And yet, they give you these damned optimistic estimates for 2025, which is next year, saying 1,341. If it's been falling at the rate of 12, 13, 15% a decade, it's not going, that figure for 2025 is not going to be 1,341, it's going to be less. The figure for 2050 is not going to be 1,140, it's going to be a lot less. Incidentally, broadly, the definition is that if it's below 1,700 cubic meters per capita availability, then that is a water stress situation. Below 1,000 is water scarcity. It's a crisis. We have many, many zones of these crises within India on these things. Maharashtra, RTIs done some years ago, and we have not been able to get new data since then. RTIs show, these RTIs were done by Priyanka Kakotkar in the Times of India. They are saying new data not available or being organized or whatever they do, they say that. Cities in Maharashtra, cities and towns get 400% more water than villages. The water comes from the villages. The rivers are located in the villages. I live in Bandra Reclamation in Mumbai. All of Mumbai gets most of its water from half a dozen lakes in Thane, Palghar, Tulsi, Vaitarna. From these lakes, if you go to those lakes, which are in the Adivasi areas, you will find it very hard to find a significant number of households that have piped water. They don't have piped water, but we have their water in our pipes. Okay? That's again the overlap, rural to urban and poor to rich. But you go to Varli, you go to the Varli areas, not Varli, but the Varli areas, you will find very few households of Adivasis in Mokhada, these places, having piped water. but the lakes are there and we get the water. Maharashtra is 55% rural population in the 2011 census, 45% urban. That is what, and though 45% are urban, they get almost 5 times more water per capita than rural Maharashtrians. And incidentally, the drinking water and urban water, 40% is lost in leakages. And though that leakages is a very fraudulent word, because a lot of it is going into illegal bottling companies, which give you your plasticated water. Maharashtra has 36 districts, including Pune. Maharashtra has 36 districts, but just 3 districts, just 3. Remember, this is water from reservoirs, selected lakes and notified rivers. So it is water that is, the numbers I'm giving you, they are allocated by the government. It's not an accidental or a existing situation. They are allocated by the government. And these 36 districts of Maharashtra, 3, Mumbai, Pune, Thane, are allocated more than half the drinking water of the state of Maharashtra. More than half the drinking water of the state of Maharashtra goes to Mumbai, Pune and Thane. That is from Maharashtra's dams, notified rivers and selected lakes. 17 of the 36 districts get less than 1% each of drinking water. The area that you cover, Marathwada, so often, it's got 8 districts. It is every year notified as the greatest water rainfall deficit region of Maharashtra. Yeah. It's got 16% of Maharashtra's population. It's got 8.8% of allocated water. So, water inequalities are extreme inequalities. Like we are now busily catching up in all other sectors to make the inequalities far more extreme. Marathwada every year reports the highest rainfall deficit, but gets, with 16% of the population, gets 8.8% of the water allocated to it. Then there's the transfers from agriculture to industry. When we've all looked at the fighting and the struggles against giant dams. And all these giant dams and even major dams have been justified on the ground that they will lead to boosting agriculture. Actually, many of the dams have not at all been built for agriculture. Take the gigantic Polavaram. Take the Polavaram Dam. It doesn't increase the bloody Ayacut by anything. 0. Then why are you having such a giant dam? Look at all the SEZs around it. It's an industrial dam. It's for industrial purposes. So you're having all over the country, whether in the SEZs or outside the SEZs, a systematic transfer of water from agriculture to industry. Then there is this bottling thing. Nobody has a figure on how many legal, illegal bottling units there are in this country. And since the early 90s, I first covered that in 93 in Ramanathapuram, Ramnad district of Tamil Nadu, the emergence of water lords who were making much more money from selling water than from agriculture. It was the richer farmer who could buy the pump. In Tamil Nadu, they were known as Tannir Adipati, the water lords of Ramnad. You'll find that in my book, and I've written about it after that also. Fast forward to Maharashtra. Do you know this extraordinary state, Marathwada, which has the greatest water deficit and lowest water allocation, has for 50 years, 46 to 50 years, Marathwada has supplied beer and alcohol factories, 24 factories all over the region, water at 1 paisa per liter. Then, now in 16 and in 2020, we covered when Suhas was where we looked at what happens as the scarcity period comes in, the cost of water. So we found this poor woman standing there. She had earlier paid 15 paisa for a liter of water. When we were standing there with her, she was paying 45 paisa per liter. And then when I was shocked and outraged, she said, old woman, and she said, "Bete, come back in a month, I'll be paying 1 rupee." And she was paying 1 rupee a liter, where beer and alcohol factories were paying 1 paisa per liter. Now I believe it's less because the scarcity is less after, partly because of your extreme event flooding. But okay, then there were lots of protests against this beer and alcohol companies getting 1 paisa water. So there was a huge struggle against it, and the victorious strugglers got the government to raise it to 4 paisa a liter, which it remains at. There is legislation on the table which is to make it much higher. It hasn't happened. Okay, 4 paisa per liter, that woman is paying 40 paisa per liter. Look, if we don't understand the inequalities and the injustices of water, we're not going to get a damn fix on any story. We will get lost in the technology of extraction, in the linkages to market. We'll get lost in all that stuff if you don't look at the basic, gross, sickening, obscene inequalities in water. The emergence of water markets, by the way, I mean, Gujarat and Tamil Nadu have gone far ahead in that in the last 20 years with that sort of a thing. But this industry has many other aspects to it. With all these situations, let me show you what I'm shifting here briefly to lifestyle to show you just at random picked off the internet. Some are older, some are 2023, 2024. Have a look at our lifestyles. Mumbai, and these are places like Varli Seaface, Badala, Bandra. Have a look. This is the real estate.
You will be surprised to see what Mumbai's real estate can offer you. The most crazy feature of this apartment. In your deck, you have a private swimming pool that offers you tremendous view of Arabian Sea. I love Mumbai. Truly, Mumbai's real estate is something to look forward to. Owning an apartment like this just fills you with a different set of mindset, sets you with bigger goals, and definitely rejuvenates your body, mind, and soul.
Real estate that rejuvenates body, mind, and soul.
Life has given you an opportunity to buy a property in Mumbai with your own private swimming pool and your own private terrace. This is your private swimming pool, and that is your private terrace. This is your plunge pool, your shower, your fun party zone, whatever you wish to feel like. You have 2 rain showers, you have your jacuzzi down. This will be roughly about 3 feet deep on the deepest end, and you have the shower also. This view is straight from your bedroom, straight out. This is the highlight of this property.
By the way, you'll be glad to know that we are even outpacing England, but they've gone one up and we haven't caught up on this. They put up a 150 feet long glass pool between 2 buildings in the embassy area of London. Imagine the joy. You can wave at all the traffic below. It's 150 feet above the ground. It connects 2 skyscrapers. Here are ads from our newspapers. Kids, why do kids love gated communities? Kids love to live in gated communities because they get to make many more friends. And communities have larger space and facilities to keep them active and interested. And the most important thing, parents are happy since the children can engage activities without troubling them. Yeah, the swimming pool, cafeteria, blah, 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 health and beauty services. Okay, this I'm very glad to say the noise we made about it in 2015-16. Building came up, but they have not filled the swimming pools. This is an extraordinary Aqua Grande in Borwell with a swimming pool in every apartment, in every floor, called the balcony swimming pool. I assure you, there are at least 3-4 such buildings in Pune which have indoor internal apartment swimming pools. Now, this is how it should have looked. It looks like this, but without the water, because of the amount of trouble that was created. We struck when the drought was bad, really bad, 2016, and I made a lot of noise. Yeah. Now look at it. By the way, the first 10 floors, there are no swimming pools. That's a parking garage. These are for 5-car families and stuff. Okay. So this is the artist's vision or nightmare or whatever of what that thing would look at. Because you're going to be making your whole climate change unit with 10 floors of parking. Okay, and your own heater, extreme heat events and stuff that you'll be doing there. Right. Now, this is the ugly, if you like, Novo Riche, whatever thing of Mumbai is Novo Riche. I'm from Chennai. They're much more classy. Yeah, and aesthetic. So we don't do anything stupid like one on every floor. We stick to one on every 3rd floor. Yeah, the Keelpock range. Anyway, the next one I'm going to show you is the hoarding, which was my favorite, which was removed after I wrote about it. Luxury homes with an attached forest reserve. The damn tiger doesn't have one. Okay, but there are luxury homes with an attached forest reserve. Blah, blah, blah. Marvel, and Marvel is it's a marvel, really. I mean, now this was the figures I gave you on Priyanka Kakutkar's RTIs. 55% of Maharashtra's population is rural, 45%. Okay. Now, not very far from those hoardings are how ordinary Maharashtrians collect their water. The queues begin from 4 a.m. They start putting their buckets, their pots, their things there. Here was when Jaideep and I were in Yavatmal, we watched this woman collecting, she had 2 pots, each of which could take 15 liters or so. She did that some 40 times while we were there. We calculated that her home was very close by, but the trips she made, she walked 12 kilometers that morning. She's standing on stones, 5 stones that she's piled up, and saving water from a municipal tank that's leaking. And then pouring it into that pot. Then she will she'll fill that 2 pots and walk to her home, keep them there. She's an Adivasi woman. This is in Osmanabad, Takwiki village, which has extraordinary expenditures on water. Everybody, all transport, any cycle will be carrying 3-4 pots in summer, late summer. All this is across Maharashtra, from Vidarbha to Marathwada to northern Maharashtra, the whole works. My favorite, of course. And by the way, a story I wrote on water inequalities was in the NCERT textbooks for a long time. Last year, they purged a lot of us, as you know. But I was, I took it with good grace because I was in distinguished company in being kicked out. I was kicked out in the same tranche as Charles Darwin. So Darwin, though I've begun to have problems with Darwin. Your Pune police commissioner, Satyapal Singh, when he was junior education minister, HR minister, junior HRD minister, he and I made speeches in the same hall one day after each other, thank God. In Lucknow, where he made his famous challenge on how unscientific Darwin is. He said, Is there any man who can claim to have gone into the forest and watched apes turn into men? Next day when I spoke in that place, the audience had said that I had to comment on it. I said, look, he's right. I mean, none of us have seen apes turn into men. But we live in privileged times when Satyapal Singh and his cabinet colleagues are successfully pursuing the reverse process, with due apologies to the apes. But yeah. Now in Nagpur, at 47 degrees, temperature could reach 47 degrees. When my colleague Jaideep Hardikar, who's not here today, and I went there, it was 43 or so, 43, 44. And in the middle of a drought declared area was the fun and food village with its special snowdrome, imported wholly from Japan and reconstructed here. This is their thing. Yeah. And inside is the skating rink. There's 44 blankety blank degrees outside. Okay. And you have this snow rink and a snow creator. And well, that's the fun and food village. Oh, there's another aspect to Maharashtra, which, I've lived in this state for now what? Almost 40 years, and you just have to love it. Another industry that's come up massively is religious tourism, which uses unbelievable amounts of water. Okay? Unbelievable amounts of water. So in 2016, accompanied inevitably by Jaideep Hardikar, we roamed around. You know what happened in 2016? For the first time, many rivers went dry in 139 years. The Godavari went dry at the source. The Ramakunda, the sacred bathing ghats of Godavari, you can trace it in literature for about to 1100 years ago. The Ramakunda went dry, but Maharashtra knew how to solve the problem. One of the reasons they went dry, guys, every urban Maharashtrian knows it, beautification. They took a natural rock formation and decked it up with, it has to be Italian marble, right? Not Jaipur and shit like that. Italian marble, and the rocks couldn't breathe. The water could not come through. The water that comes down, in Brahmagiri, comes down in streams down the mountain and into the Ramakunda and into the Ganga Sagar, and from there into the Ramakunda, that went dry. Now there was a huge problem when it went dry. That's the place where for 10 centuries or more, people have left the body of the deceased loved one. So you had trucks taking tons of bones and skeletons away from there every day. Now the government was shocked, but of course we had a dynamic chief minister, Mr. Fadnavis was CM, and they knew what to do. You know what they did? For 3 months, every day, they poured 90 tankers of water into the river, making us the only society in the world that poured tanker water into a river. Normally, it's the other way around, right? You fill your tankers with river water, but we poured it. Now, all around the Ramakunda, we had this astonishing sight. That's the sacred bathing ghat. Okay. Now, the sacred bathing ghat is being filled up by a tanker. And on the edge of the ghat, we found people bathing in the sacred waters of a tanker. We went to the source of 7 rivers, including the Krishna, which was in crisis itself, drying up. Everywhere the towns had become fully concretized. The ground, there was no breathing for the soil. The soil could not breathe, could not release water, you could not have flow. All of this in the name of beautification and religious tourism. So there you are with that guy. and as I said, vehicles everywhere else. Now, incidentally, this perverse nature of destroying something to save it is global. In 2022, the super rich who always meet sometimes twice a year, usually once a year at Davos. In 2022, the super rich, the billionaires of the world, 1,040 private luxury jets flew to and from Davos, releasing 4 times the amount of carbon dioxide emissions that a typical week in Europe would see. In fact, it was equal to 350,000 gasoline powered cars. And what were they meeting in Davos for? What was the subject? Climate change. Right? So, that's that part of it. Then you can say food crop to cash crop. Sugarcane, by the way, 25% of the country's sugarcane comes from highly water stressed districts of Maharashtra. Highly water stressed districts. And at the same time, the digging for water in these places, particularly near Latur and elsewhere, in 2014, the Groundwater Supply Department put out a notice on its website. Very bland, bureaucratically written, but in a sense appealing to people that bore wells are now, you see, okay, look, Maharashtra is 93% hard rock. That's the composition of Maharashtra soil. Yeah, 93% hard rock. What do you think we're talking about when we talk about the Deccan Trap? Right. The thing in Maharashtra is that if you don't get water in the first 300 feet, then you're going to get it after 700 feet. Because you've got 300 to 400 feet of massive, solid, Dakkani rock in between. Okay. The GWSD put out this notice saying borewell drilling in near Aurangabad, Latur, these places is in danger of striking paleohistoric storages of water. In other words, water that could be several millennia old below the Deccan Trap, probably much purer than the water at the surface. But how the hell do we know? And it mixes with different stratum and different alluvial soils and whatever as it comes to the surface. But you are taking water in the Latur area from water that could be thousands of years old. Right? That is the kind of situation. Now, sugarcane, most of our sugarcane is grown in areas which have come under drought prone area, DPAP, the drought prone areas program. They are water stressed districts. And you know, guys, how much water it takes to cultivate 1 acre of sugarcane? 18 million liters. If you want to get an idea of what 18 million liters is, it's about 7.5 Olympic swimming pools. 7.5 Olympic sized swimming pools, or in volume, the equal of 9 Boeing Dreamliners. Oh, but we did another thing. You see, we have to be the best, right? I mean, we're the greatest nation in the Milky Way galaxy. So, around 2012-13, we started around here in Baramati side, rose cultivation. Rose cultivation takes 21.2 million liters at the, you know what, one rose, 21.2 million liters of water per acre of rose cultivation. How does that work out? By the way, in Kenya, in Ethiopia, Indian companies are growing roses, stressing out Kenyan farmers totally because each damn rose takes 5 liters of water. A rose by any name is not sweet anymore. Each rose takes 5 liters. Yeah, 21.2 million liters per acre, damn it. And that has dried out all the water. See, the privatization process takes place through this borewell stuff also. Sugarcane in Maharashtra is grown on 4% of arable land, or 4% of cultivated land, and gets 70% of its irrigation water. 70% for 4% of cultivation. Then you have the transfers from poor to rich in very dramatic ways. In 2009 and 10, there was a huge drought in this area, in Maharashtra, and the Bombay High Court, on an appeal, ruled that IPL must pay. They must pay the security fees. They must pay for the water that they're using. Yeah, they cannot simply take it from the municipal taps or whatever and do it. They have to pay a market rate or whatever. And then the court said you cannot use this level of water for cleaning the grounds, etc. So they pulled out all matches which involved Maharashtra. I mean, they shifted to Kolkata, Ahmedabad, Baroda and other centers. And meanwhile, after that, the court order has simply been ignored. By the next year, everything is forgotten. But even more important, at the time of independence, Maharashtra had 3 or 4 golf courses. In 1989, it had about 19 golf courses. Now it had about 16 golf courses. Now it has close to 30. Golf is the biggest land sport consuming water and the biggest user of pesticides of any sport. The pesticides you use in golf, in Philippines, there are shooting wars between farmers and private armies of the golf course guys. People are killing each other because the pesticide is seeping into the water of the farmers. Yeah. A golf course, an 18-hole golf course in the season will take 1.8 to 2 million liters per day. Within cities, there is the port to transfer rich of, if you check, say, South Mumbai, Kolaba, with the burbs, you'll see a gigantic difference between, it's the class difference, it's the caste difference, all of that. I think that all of you should know one thing. Irrigation in this country has a 1,000-year-old caste geography. It has more than a 1,000-year-old caste geography. By the way, any sociologist, anyone here, I won't demand that knowledge of the scientists, but you'll see anyone who's done field work. Where is the Dalit Basti located in an Indian village? On the outskirts, always on the outskirts of the village. But which outskirts? Southern outskirts. Sorry, southern outskirts. You're quite right. Why? Because most streams in the country flow north to south. If you look at we faithfully replicate the Varna system in irrigation. You see who's controlling the headwaters, who's cultivating at the headwaters, the top Varna. Who's at the intermediate waters, the intermediate castes. Who's at the tailwaters, the Shudras. And who's completely out of the picture, the Mlechas. Okay? You have a very serious caste geography and we just refuse to recognize what this means in terms of water as a human right or as any right. But we all do read about, don't we? Dalit women stripped and beaten for trying to take water from the main community's well in the village. How many times have you seen that? In your career as journalist, a sufficient number of times to make you sick. Yeah, it is the caste division of water. Understand how important caste is to the access and right to water. Bottled water plants, by the way, how many struggles there have been in this country against Coca-Cola and Pepsi, from Plachi Mada in Kerala to Rajasthan. In Maharashtra in Thane was giving them good water cleaned by the municipality for 5 paisa a litre. Okay? And God knows how many liters Coke today uses. And another way of looking at the caste geography, this north-south flowing of the stream, also there is another reason why the religious rationalization for keeping Dalits on the south of the village is that Lord Yama dwells in the south. And at night, if he's pecky and looking for a snack, you might be it. So the Dalit Basti is, that rationalization is, they are the guys who are the grave diggers, whatever, though they're not allowed to bury their own people there. So the Dalit Basti is always on the south. This logic changes when you go to states where the water and the or the winds don't run that way. So you go to Rajasthan, it's entirely different on the border in Barmer, in those areas, it's very different. The Raigars of Rajasthan are always kept on the west of the Rajputs. The Raigars of Rajasthan are kept on the east of the Rajput locations. Why? Because the winds there come in from the west. And the Raigars are flayers, tanners, slaughterers of beef. And the sacred nostrils of the Rajputana cannot be offended by the smells of dead cows, right? So there, a historical switch, they come on the east side of the village so that their activity takes the wind takes their odors away. Peculiarly, in Rajasthan, where you have those great sand dunes, the Rajputs live at the top of the dunes. They live at the top of the dunes because there is a security advantage from historic times. You were able to see an approaching enemy. You were able to, But you know what? They don't cultivate land on the top of the dune. At the bottom of the dune live the Dalits. The Rajputs come down to cultivate. Their cultivating lands are at the bottom of the dune. The Dalits have to cultivate wherever they can. But they can't cultivate in the appropriate land at the bottom of the dune, because remember, the bottom of the dune has runoff water and therefore more fertile land compared to the top of the dune. But in Maharashtra, very important to come back to Maharashtra, in the thirst economy, there are two aspects to it: the borewell economy and the tank economy. To understand the borewell and scope of it and what it's doing in terms of climate change, in terms of environmental damage, please know this. My home state of Tamil Nadu, I'm a Telugu born and brought up in Tamil Nadu, has an extraordinary little town called Tiruchangod. Tiruchangod is about 20 kilometers from Erode. Tiruchangod, how would you accept it if I said that this town of Tiruchangod of 60,000 people, 2011 census, is the most deeply connected town to the rest of the country? It is the capital of Borwell rigs. It's got about 20,000 Borwell rigs. Only 10,000 are registered there. Another 10,000 are registered in neighboring states to escape taxes. But let's accept that only 10,000 rigs. Now, I spent a lot of time with them. You know where all the Borwell rigs of Tiruchangod are operating? They're operating in every state and union territory of India. They will boast to you that they have operated in the proximity of Cherrapunji, which also had a drought in the last 20 years. And they say, according to them, they do 1,400 feet of drilling. Each rig does 1,400 feet of drilling per day. Because if it's 300 meters, 1,400 meters or whatever feet. And if you do 300, then you will, there is loose formation soil. Loose formation soil is cheaper to drill. It will be about 80 rupees. Hard rock Maharashtra soil, 90 rupees per foot is the drilling charge. So the minimum you can dig a borewell in today in Maharashtra is 55 to 60,000 rupees. But if you go closer to urban centers, Nagpur, it's 1 lakh per 300 feet. Okay. I think this is very important for you to know, because borewell bankruptcies are a serious factor in farmers' suicides. We met Bishwambar Jagtap in Bid, who has put 48 borewells on 18 acres. The champ is in Telangana, in Nalagonda, 56 in 14 acres. Now, your desperation for that water, now you know why that younger brother killed the older brother. The borewell economy, this is your borewell. It's a typical borewell rig. A proud owner, I interviewed Mr. Shelke. He bought it for 1.5 crores, his cost. He said, Sahab, recover तो कर दिया 6 महीने में. Now this will be typically accompanied by a big van of workers. And it was fantastic standing on the Aurangabad side highway and hearing and seeing the vans go by and hearing Tamil and Chhattisgarhi spoken. So I stop it. It has a Keralite cook. It has a Tamilian accountant. It has labor entirely from the states of Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand. So who owns the rig? Tiruchengood. So I asked them at Tiruchengood, why are you not taking Tamilians? Why? They said, sir, Nambalikal and the discipline kadiyade. Our fellows don't have that discipline. And you know, the rogues, they charge 450, 500 rupees minimum to come. Those boys come for 200. It's a pan-Indian exercise. Okay, so they're from all over. This is a Borwell Rig. Now just make a small calculation. Just Tiruchengod's rigs. Let's accept what they say there are only 10,000. They say they work almost through the year except the 2 monsoon months. I don't accept that. I think that simply the traveling distances, if you're going to Mizoram, Rajasthan, are huge. Let's say 200 days a year they're working, and that they're not drilling 1,400 as they say. Let's say they're drilling 1,000 feet. It means the borewell rigs of this single town are drilling 2 billion feet into your aquifer each year. And there are similar borewell towns coming up in Gujarat and Punjab. One town with 10,000 rigs is annually drilling 2 billion feet into the aquifer. God bless the aquifer. Okay, so this is the borewell economy. Alongside that is the tanker economy. By the way, this great word tanker might bring delusions of grandeur before us. It's simply a rolled sheet of mild steel, 3 mm. That's all it is. Okay, but it can carry from 500 liters, which you will put on a bullock cart, to 25,000 liters, which you will put on a huge van. Okay, this is at the heart of Maharashtra's. This is Ahmednagar, Rauri, the heart of Maharashtra's tanker economy. Almost all the tanker factories are owned by serving or ex-MLAs and ministers. Yeah. So that's, you can see the lathe on which they are rolling the steel. It's mild steel, it's 3 mm, and you can take 25,000, and they make, during the scarcity period, they make lakhs in a day. Well, you've got all those women buying it at 1 rupee a litre, 40 paise a litre, you'll make money, no doubt about that. And where do they get the water from? From public tanks, from stealing from the overhead tanks, the municipal tanks, from the river, wherever they steal it from. So this is where, in the same areas, how families are getting their water. So that poor to rich, we have done the tanker borewell economy, we have looked at the lifestyles, the gated communities, the snow domes, yeah. And there is the virtual water exports. If you look at the international trade in rice, India's virtual water exports were roughly 5,181 millimeters per year, cubic millimeters per year, making us the second largest gross and net exporter of virtual water related to the international trade in rice production. This is a UNESCO value of water figure. I'm not saying you shouldn't have exports. I'm saying, looking at the fact that we are in the top 3 countries of virtual water exports, which is Thailand, India, and the United States, we can ask ourselves, what are we doing that our per ton of paddy virtual export is so huge, 5,000 liters, while others are doing it in 1,500. You can think up whether you adopt SRI system, rice intensification, whatever methods you choose, it at least gives you a chance to think and plan that we can do better, we can do this differently. So that's the thing on water, virtual water. The last thing is, one is that I think you absolutely need a constitutional declaration of water as a basic fundamental right. I'm not calling it a basic fundamental human right. There are millions of other species. It's a basic fundamental right of living beings. You can make for human beings the provisions you want to outside of that. That might change from year to year depending on the water situation of an area. But water is a human right. Do you think that, and it's not just humans, but it's other species. The second thing you need to do is to prioritize your water uses. I mean, homes, hospitals, schools, domestic consumption, food crop in agricultural production, water for livestock. Please imagine, Maharashtra has huge quantities of livestock. I always notice that when there's a drought situation, Maharashtra is better in that respect, that it does not allow that kind of huge death of livestock. But in many states, you'll find all the young IAS officers trained, grown up in urban areas, immediately sending off water to the villages for human beings. Nobody thinks about the bloody livestock which keep those human beings alive. So you need water as a human right, not just human, but for other species. Priorities of list for water. Everyone says, oh, agriculture is taking 60% of agriculture is in fact under irrigated. All our planning has been done in 75 years for irrigated farming, not for the dryland farmer. We haven't given a damn thought to the dryland farmer. Yeah. So you need to think out different ways. I mean, that's where the scientists come in. Then you need lobbying and legislation on this. Don't think. You see, you recognize that water is a finite and exhaustible resource, that you need to dismantle the thirst economy, that you abandon grandiose lifestyles, plan for dryland agriculture, crop sustainability, ban on, above all, on the privatization of water, because that is the costliest item when the things are scarce. Do you think that it can't be done? It can be. A little country like Uruguay held a referendum in 2003 in which they introduced a constitutional amendment. Water can never be privately owned in Uruguay. It is a public resource. You cannot be profiting on the scarcity of others. So I said, they have recognized what I told you at the beginning. The two greatest crops in the world, harvested by very few, but the greatest in volume, are hunger and thirst. Yeah. So you need to think about this. You need to think about, why can't we have a constitutional amendment? Why can't we declare water privatization to be unlawful, illegal, and yeah? Thank you very much.